Hi, thank you for engaging with our ESS Mental Health Awareness Week communications. This video will open your eyes to stigma, discrimination and bias in mental health. Hopefully it'll give you a better understanding of what this may look like and discuss what we can try and do to reduce and eliminate it. I am Katrina Francis. I'm one of the ESS Nutrition and Wellbeing Engagement Officers. To get started, I would like you to close your eyes and imagine the following. You get a call from someone you know who has opened up that they are feeling a bit low and would really appreciate it if you could make your evening free to spend with them. So you agree to go and spend the evening with them. You go to the shops to grab a few bits to take with you, for example, some nibbles, as food always makes someone feel better. You have finished shopping and you are on your way back to your car when you notice an individual sat in their car hysterically crying. You go over to knock on the window to check that they are okay. But you get an urgent call from a relative and they've told you that they've been rushed to A&E as they've cut their finger while doing some DIY. So you must go to A&E to meet them to check that they are okay. You get to hospital in a fluster as you're worried and you're not 100% sure where to go. You accidentally walk into the eating disorder ward. You have a look around and realise that your relative is not there. You are then directed to the correct place and you meet your relative. Now, when you're ready, open your eyes. I want you to think about the following questions. So what gender or race was the person who called you at the beginning? What gender or race was the individual hysterically crying in the car? What gender or race was the relative that had been sent to A&E? And finally, what gender or race were the individuals in the eating disorder ward? Now, some of these answers may be due to who you naturally surround yourself with, or it may be part of our unconscious bias. So what is bias? Bias is an inclination for or against one person or group, especially in a way considered to be unfair. The most common biases are based on characteristics such as race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation, socio-economic background, and educational background. An unconscious bias is related to stereotypes and attributing certain qualities to a certain group of people. For example, in the activity, you may have pictured an underweight female in the eating disorder ward, but people do not need to be underweight to have an eating disorder. All eating disorders do start somewhere, just from thoughts and behaviours. And also 1 in 3 people with an eating disorder is a male. Next, let's look at stigma. So mental health stigma refers to societal disapproval, or when society places shame on people who live with a mental illness or seek help for emotional distress, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or PTSD. Now, why does this happen? Mental health stigma can come from stereotypes. So stereotypes are generalised beliefs of an entire group of people that are often inaccurate, negative, and offensive. They allow a person to make quick judgments about other people based on a few defining characteristics, which they then just apply to anybody within that group. So, for example, people may believe that those living with mental health problems are dangerous, when in fact they're actually at a higher risk of being attacked or harming themselves. Or it may be the stereotype that people with depression are lazy, or those with anxiety are cowardly. So while one thought or belief has then been used across everybody. Mental health stigma can also come from the media, so often a very negative medium that focuses on the bad and does not always show the good. The media often tends to link mental ill health with violence, criminal behaviours, and that actually they're unable to live their normal lives, when in reality this is not the case, and people with mental ill health often do slip under the radar. You wouldn't necessarily know who has a mental health condition, they act no differently. And as mentioned, they're not likely to be violent or dangerous, they're actually more likely to hurt themselves. And finally, mental health stigma can come from personal, social and family beliefs. So what we think is driven from those around us. So if we surround ourselves with people who have this stigma towards those with mental health problems or issues, we are more likely to think and feel the same. So for example, traditionally, men are told to man up, and that there's these gender roles which have restricted men from feeling emotions or crying, feeling fear, which may make men less likely to speak out, and we do know that this is the case. Also sayings such as boys will be boys relates them and links them with aggression and violence. Now, I wonder how many of you pictured the person in the car who was hysterically crying to be a male, compared to the number of people who pictured the person sent to A&E following doing DIY was male. And these are just linked with some of those unconscious bias and perhaps those stereotypes which are embedded within communities and so on. And finally, discrimination. So discrimination is when someone is treated differently due to them having a mental health problem. There are different types of discrimination. So we have direct discrimination. This is when someone is treated worse than somebody else just because they have that disability or mental ill health. So for example, John is not offered a promotion as he has depression, or Carrie has more experience and better qualifications than other candidates, but is purely not given the job because she has bipolar. These are examples of direct discrimination. They're very blatantly clear that's what is happening. There's also discrimination arising from disability. So this is when someone is treated badly due to something that happens as a result of a disability. So for example, a behaviour that is linked to it. An example is Jan has a disciplinary warning due to sickness related absences, and this is because of bipolar. Or Peter deals with psychosis, so where he hears voices, and by talking to them, it makes things better, but he's actually asked to leave the shop floor where he works when he is talking to them. So making them act differently just because they have this mental health problem. Indirect discrimination is when a person or organisation seems to be treating everybody equally, but actually without realising it sometimes, or perhaps they do realise it, but they're trying to make it seem covered up. They put those with a disability at a disadvantage. So for example, advice is not given over the phone or email, and that you actually have to travel to a centre, which may not be possible for everybody, especially if someone's experiencing a bad day, they may not want to actually leave their homes. Or it may be they're only given promotions to people with driving licences, even though that's not a key requirement for the job, but they know an individual with a mental ill health can't drive, for example. Harassment is a type of discrimination, and this is when an environment is intimidating, offensive and humiliating, so made to feel in a certain way. An example of this is Mary has an eating disorder and somebody openly makes an offensive remark about it, whether it's directly at her or whether it's just a comment about people with eating disorders in an open plan office. That is seen as harassment. And then finally, victimisation. And victimisation is when someone is put at a disadvantage following making an legislation about discrimination. So, for example, Jibin supports a colleague to complain about discrimination within the workplace, but then refuses her a promotion as her loyalty to the company is in question, despite actually helping her and wanting her to report it in the first place. But the facts are, despite stigma, discrimination and bias, is that mental health problems affect everybody, including men and Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, which actually tend to have the most amount of stigma, discrimination and bias towards them within the mental health setting. So some of the facts: 1 in 8 men has a common mental health problem. 3 times as many men as women just die from suicide. Men aged 40 to 49 have the highest suicide rates within the UK. According to the government's National Wellbeing Survey, men reported lower levels of life satisfaction than women, and men are less likely to access psychological therapies. So it does affect them. They need to not be swept under the carpet. And just again, going back to the activity at the beginning, how many people imagine men in that activity at the start of the presentation for the person who was crying, the person who called them for help within that eating disorder ward and so on. And moving on to Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, or the BAME community. Some of the facts: Black men are more likely to experience psychotic disorder. Black men are more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act. South Asian women are an at-risk group for suicide. And refugees and asylum seekers are more likely to experience mental health problems. So again, it is present within these different communities. It may actually be that they're less likely to get help, as it may not be spoken about as much in some of these communities. But again, ask yourself the question: who pictured a Black or an ethnic minority background within that activity at the start? Just to get you thinking about, it is affecting everybody, mental health. So how can we stop it? Shockingly, 9 out of 10 people with mental health problems say stigma and discrimination have a negative effect on their lives. No one should feel ashamed or treated differently because of a mental health problem. And it's surprising just how many people suffer from them at least at one point during their lifetime, or you'll definitely know somebody who does suffer. And we all play a part, and we all need to challenge it when we see stigma, discrimination and bias. But what is it that we can do? So first of all, we can learn how to start a conversation about mental health. There is loads of resources on Mind Mental Health UK that encourages people to start the conversation, and also their top tips to keep the conversation going. Ask twice. So, are you okay? Are you sure? Replying, yeah, I'm fine, thanks, is often just a habit. They may not necessarily feel fine, so asking twice shows that you care, and that actually if they on reflection think I'm not okay, I'm now going to open up, it gives them that chance. Make checking in on someone part of your routine. So put it into your diary. Give someone you work with or you know a call each week to check in and make sure that they're okay. Talk openly. So if you are open and honest, others may also feel comfortable talking to you. Educate yourselves and others. So share this video so that others will also learn about it too. They're able to look out for when it may be occurring. You may not have been aware of some of the examples of discrimination beforehand, and now you know. Know the facts. So know that mental health affects everybody, not a select few individuals in society. We're all at an equal chance of getting a mental health illness. And then finally, include everyone. Be inclusive within your conversations. Don't feel like you can't approach a certain individual. Make sure you're inclusive and you talk to multiple people about this and share this. And that brings us to the end. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and please do share and spread the message so we can increase awareness around mental health stigmas and so on. If you do have any questions, please do give us an email. So it's ess.wellness@compass-group.co.uk. If you'd like a copy of some of the slides, that is fine. If you do want to find out more just in general about mental health illnesses and mental health problems, Mental Health UK, Mind and the NHS are fantastic resources, all accredited as well. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.